Can I confirm that we have quorum? I'm not sure what quorum is for this one.
You do have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tom. Call this meeting to order at 10:32 a.m. and I'm going to acknowledge that I'm speaking from Mochalat territory. So on to adoption of the agenda.
Move adoption.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Sorry, is there anyone opposed? Okay, petitions and delegations, nothing. Adoption of the previous minutes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none. No business arising, no public considerations. Chair's report. I don't really have much to report here except to welcome Kira Marshall as our tourism coordinator, who's already been into town, talking to the various businesses and myself. And one of the things we're going to be working on is an app for when people come to town that'll hopefully be geolocated so that as they drive in, they can see points of interest along the way. So yeah, some really interesting ideas there. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so no staff reports, no bylaws, no correspondence. On to director's reports. Forestry challenges. Director Phil will lead a discussion on forestry challenges.
How did I get that?
I must have advocated for it, so.
Not me.
Really?
No, I have no recollection of that whatsoever.
Well, somebody did because they recorded it here, so.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I believe I thought we had received an email from Director Cornfield advising that he wished to do this. Obviously, we were mistaken, so that is
if I could take the opportunity just to say a few words. Yesterday was a continuation of our City of Campbell River quarterly resource sector engagement meetings, and we had all of the major forest companies and on the North Island present, and members from the Truck Loggers Association and Kofi, and was a very healthy and engaging process with all parties involved. And as we continue to work with the forest sector, as it plays a significant role in the economy for the entire North Island.
Thank you for that, Director Adams. Would anybody else like to speak regarding this issue?
Yeah. Please, Mr. Davis.
Okay, I see Brad's hand up. Director Unger.
Yeah, just to add on to Director Adams. Again, a well put together agenda on the forestry concerns, challenges in the future. Well represented from the North Island, so it was really good to see, and showing the North Island working together, and I think that's fantastic. So great job, Director Adams and Council. Campbell River.
Yes. Where's my little hand sign? There we go.
Go ahead, Director Cornfield.
Yeah, it was very good. I mean, if I'd asked, I would have put down a lot more information. It was full of, the difficulty right now is there's a lot of misinformation out there. I will use misinformation as the most tame comment that I've got regarding storage of carbon, fighting climate change, sustainability, old growth management, a lot of information that's not true. There is a lot of good factual information was presented to us yesterday. It's all backed up, peer reviewed, it's impeccable. They check all of it. They survey the public which found out that 87% of the people think that carbon storage via wood, trees storing carbon, is a reality, and think that that's one of the most important uses of our forests. 78% use 78% of all their lands are use sustainable and responsible forest practices. To do that, we have the largest portion of certified forest operations on the planet. Yeah, there's a number of things. We got into things like First Nations use, whether it's revenue or whether it's tenure, meaningful revenue sharing with communities, which hasn't occurred in the past, and they're open to that. The big thing is access to fiber at a reasonable price and in a reasonable time. It's quite a discussion we had on the disinformation. Not sure how to get it done, but yeah, it's about sharing facts and telling stories that are based on science and not on emotion. Just a little bit of a hint, if you look at the communities most that benefit from economically from forestry, Campbell River is number 3 in the province. So Vancouver Lower Mainland's number 1, Prince George's number 2, and Campbell River is number 3. So we're talking an industry in excess of $250 million a year annually is what it contributes. Now I should use TLA's comment in the 5 minutes that I've been talking. 10,000 trees were planted, and there was $7 million contributed to the local economy. 1/4% of the old growth gets harvested in any given year. Very, very small percentage point. And yeah, there is a real concern with the bias on the old growth committee that the government has set up. And I think it's important that people know about that. You can't have a committee that's not unbiased to determine the things that really affect our whole economy. So sorry, I had no recollection, no acknowledgement of that I was going to be leading a talk on forestry challenges. So yeah, we sequester, that was Western Forest Products. Really worthwhile to have the guys come in. In Canada, we produce 730 million tons of CO2 per year, and that was in 2019. Western Forest Products has a net positive carbon balance of 14.2 million tons. So they actually store way more carbon than what they produce through the manufacture, milling, harvesting, trucking, and everything else. So it's 14.2 million, and that's in their territory, or like in their tenures down here. So yeah, it's 70% of all the old growth within their tenures is already conserved. So it won't be harvested. So people that run around saying, my God, in 5 years, there won't be any old growth left, are absolutely incorrect. And that's only on Western's tenure, and doesn't include parklands that had never been inventoried. So it's only on their tenures. 70% is conserved now. So a lot of disinformation that really makes it difficult for the industry to function in keeping people employed and families and communities like ours going. And believe me, everybody on the North Island's community is forest dependent. You don't know until it's not there. And I'm not willing to trust that to others. Anyway, that's my comments on it.
Okay, thanks for your comments, Director Cornfield. Next we have Director Evans.
I think Director Kerr was before me.
Okay,
Davis.
Director Kerr.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director Cornfield. That was well done on the fly. You did a great job of that, and you made up for the presentation that I expected and hoped you were going to be making. So you did great on it. Yeah, I was very impressed by the presentation yesterday. I think if we could clone Susan Yurkovic, there would be absolutely no issues. I mean, we could win the media war on this issue because she was that good, that well prepared, and it honestly made me feel optimistic and positive for the first time in a long time. I really do think that. The SRD should lobby the forest minister at UBCM coming up on the committee makeup. I think it's unfortunate that it is so one-sided, and I think it's a real opportunity to add another voice to North Island concerns. So hopefully that could be a recommendation of this committee to the whole board. But I do think we need to keep it up and keep up the pressure on the government and at least make them aware that there is another side to this and there is some good scientific knowledge out there. So yeah, thank you, Councillor Cornfield. Director Cornfield.
Thanks, Director Kerr. Next, Director Evans, I believe.
Thank you, Chair Davis. Yeah, Directors Cornfield and Kerr certainly did a great job of identifying some of the key elements that came out of the session yesterday. And I think Director Unger spoke to the fact about how important and valuable it was for us to participate as a region. And I think that is key. That certainly resonated with the forestry representatives that were in attendance. I agree with Director Kerr that I think having an SRD presence and some letters of support and ongoing discussions with the ministers just adds increased value. There were just a couple of points that I was going to bring up. The particularly from Kofi, but from other representatives in the session yesterday, they have what they were calling simple fact sheets that really break it down into common language to help with myth busting. And I'm just recommending that those be distributed to the SRD as well, because I think it is about having a broader sort of broader scope of everybody talking the same language and stating the same facts over and over again. They talked about how important it was for storytelling and helping people really resonate with the types of stories that the marketing campaign that they're going to be doing. And I think we as directors all need to be sharing the same facts when we're having the conversations with residents. The other two quick points I was going to make is they spoke to First Nations relationships, and they sort of broke it down into three areas that there's equity share partnerships, joint shared equity partnerships, and aspirations to have tenure. And so I thought that was a really interesting discussion in terms of what the relationships with First Nations were, particularly this was from Kofi. That was really helpful. And they also talked about the price of lumber and that it was unsustainable at the peak that it reached of $1,630. And they think that the price volatility certainly is not good for anyone, the consumer. Tax is going to be passed on to the consumer. So they're thinking that it's going to somehow sort of settle out at the $700 to $800 range. But lots of great information shared. I found it to be just a really excellent discussion. And I'm looking forward to some of the outcomes from the marketing strategies that they're going to be undertaking.
Okay. Thank you, Director Evans. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? I see a couple of hands up, but I'm assuming they're old hands. If not, I'm going to say a couple of things. This carbon cycle issue, I'd be curious to see the statistics on that. I know when I was sitting on the climate caucus, one of the things I was raising there was it'd be really good to see some sort of carbon accounting with the forest industry, and we're unable to find anything that fully took into account not just the logging and the tree planting, but the emissions from burning of waste, because I know a huge amount of waste is burnt, well, all over BC, but definitely on Vancouver Island. In fact, myself, I worked in the forest industry for 40 years. So this is the first year I haven't actually done any of that because I've been too busy with this. But I was appalled at the amount of wood waste, usable wood waste, that is getting burned across this region. I know in some cases when there's road access, we have many people within our community that are not only cutting firewood from this waste, but are actually taking it and stockpiling it themselves and milling it. I'm talking about yellow cedar and fir and all of that. And yet so much of this is burned because it's not considered commercial. And there certainly needs to be better accounting of the carbon emissions from the burning. And I would love to see some facts regarding that. Charlie, I see you have your hand up. I'm assuming you want to respond?
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, Western has done a complete, total calculation of their carbon, which is how they get a net positive carbon balance. They have looked at every single one of their operations, ones that produce. But if I can, just to talk a little bit about burning wood, is one of the most environmentally sound ways of providing heat and everything else, being it does not produce greenhouse gases. Wood is part of the current energy cycle. You only get the climate changing impacts when you're burning fossil fuels. That's the big one. The rest is all natural. Whether you burn it, you only affect the decomposition time-wise. When debris is left on the ground, and there is a lot of debris that is left on site, it accumulates the biomass. When it rots, it produces CO2 as well. And when it's left there for all the right ecological reasons, it returns nutrients to the ground. It is not a bad thing. It would be nicer, we think, and we feel as people, that if there is a greater level of utilization, that's a good thing. You know, we want to see more wood being used, but you also have to balance that on the fact that when you use it, you're now removing that biomass from the natural cycle of providing nutrients into the soil. If you look at a tree, rapidly growing young trees sequester a lot of carbon, and those are called growth decay curves. So each species of tree, each different site class, whether it's poor, medium, or high classified site, you project how much carbon is stored. That's the growth and curve, and it goes up very steeply. So much so biological rotation in our area near here is usually considered around, on average, 80 to 120 years. So that's stored the maximum amount of carbon in the minimum amount of time. After 120 years, the growth curve starts to level off. And up to about 200 years, when a forest becomes in balance. So what is not being stored, it's trees absorb carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. So about 200 years, it's in balance. Once the forest goes on average, this is not in every case, but and not all forests are old, and it's a mixture of young. There's a lot of diversity on forests, but once you get past that 200 years, it starts to go the other way. And in fact, they become net producers of carbon dioxide. As things rot, it produces that. And so the whole issue, what people think of as old growth or massive monumental trees, you know, those big diameter, huge trees. You walk in it, it's like walking in a park. There's areas out near Tassus, out in the Artlish country, well, down on the way to Fair Harbor. Gold River has got some really nice stuff. Not in parks, but it is like a park. These large trees, very open underneath. They do not sequester as much carbon. They're on the way down. They're starting to die off. So anyway, just once again to reiterate that I'm sure Western would be very happy to come and explain their calculations, and you can see for a fact how much it is. And they went to a lot of work to get it all done, looking at every aspect of their operation. So it's those kind of facts that need to be out there, and so that people understand it. It's not about, it's all well and done for people to have different opinions and which they value more than other values, but as long as it's based on factual information, then that's good.
Okay.
That's it.
Thanks, Director Cornfield. Anybody else have any comments here? One thing I would like to say is it seems that I think Charlie would probably agree with this. In the last several years, there's been a real drop off in participation of Ministry of Forests in providing a lot of this background and research that we would hope would be impartial. And I think that's a real lack. I mean, it's like to depend on the logging companies for our information is really not the best place to be going for this. There should be independent research that we can depend on for that, because I've recently seen some research that was saying quite the opposite, that in fact old growth is a better carbon capturing, not sure what you would call it, than what we're seeing in young forests. Young forests certainly start to capture a lot of carbon after 10 to 15 years, but it's a net emission up to that point based on the research that I have read. And I see your hand is up, so I'll entertain your response.
And sorry, I don't want to drag this on, but UBC professor, when we first started looking at climate change and the whole problem with greenhouse gas emissions, did a quick calculation that young, rapidly growing forest that the size of Australia would negate any greenhouse gas problem on the planet. Did all his calculations right. The trouble is we permanently lose way more forests, and it's lost to urbanization, and it's lost to agriculture, where those lands are converted. Want to look at it, go down to the Amazon and see what's converted there. So when you look at it on a global scale, it is a huge amount that's being lost. Here in BC, we do some of the best forest management on the planet. It has always been a problem to find an acceptable source of information. Can I call it that, Martin? You know, you look at some universities. I argued very strongly in the 80s when I attended Enviro4 in Ottawa, that we needed the federal government to be that unbiased expert opinion. You know, it was an acceptable thing because they're removed from forest management for the most part in this province. It's provincial. Do we trust government? Not necessarily. Do we trust industry? Not necessarily. So it's, where do you get a source of information that the public trusts? And that's always been a problem. And I agree that the ministry has not taken that unbiased approach and have not been forthcoming. So yeah, I agree with you on that. They could be doing a lot more.
Thanks for
that. I'll be quiet now.
I would entertain a motion to draft a letter to advocate for greater Ministry of Forest participation in generating unbiased information, if anybody would be willing to bring that forward.
I'll move it.
Okay.
I'll second it with a suggested amendment.
Mhm.
I take exception to the term unbiased. I would rather have factual information.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
I thank you. I appreciate the discussion going back and forth, but you know, this isn't point counterpoint. This is for the chair to take the information that directors have provided and just receive it. And then if there is a motion like this, then that is moved and seconded and at the discretion of the committee. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Director Adams. Is there any further discussion on this motion?
Well, we need to get the rest of it written here.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for that. One thing I would be interested in hearing regarding this meeting, that it sounds like a few of you attended, was there any discussion regarding First Nations implications in terms of their claims on territory and its upcoming impacts on forestry?
Yes.
Director Evans talked about that a little bit.
I see Dave's got his hand up. Would you like to respond?
No, I don't want to respond. I just, if you're waiting for the motion to be finished there, I think staff are going to need a little help in what that motion says.
Charlie, would you like to take that on?
I'll give it a try. The committee recommended a letter be sent to the Minister of Forests, encouraging the ministry to become more involved in distributing fact-based, I think, was that your term, Director Adams? In distributing fact-based information on forestry, or fact-based forest information. That cover what you were trying to say, Martin?
I was actually thinking more in terms of them conducting research, because that's something that seems to have fallen off the table in the last few years.
Okay, how about to become more involved in research and distribution of fact-based information? That cover it?
That works for me. In the meantime, I see Director Moglov has her hand up.
Thank you. I was actually going to make that point that Director Cornfield made, i.e. that's not just distribution, but in many of the other areas related to resource, we've used the term science-based, and I wonder if we want to be consistent. I understand. I don't really want to wordsmith, but we've used it so many times in our motions to AVICC and etc. So I'm thinking that science-based. I'll just put that out there.
I would take that as a friendly.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that. Director Kerr.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if we are sending a letter to the Minister of Forests that we might also express our concern about the unbalanced makeup of the committee that's been put together. Somebody might want to wordsmith the name of the committee. I'm not sure what it is, but it doesn't. I don't feel like it needs a separate letter, that we can include it in the same correspondence.
Director Cornfield.
Yeah, I've got a concern. I think it's two separate things. And I think we need to do some more digging on the committee structure before we could make a motion. This one, I think, is straightforward, that we want the ministry to take a greater degree of involvement in both research and distribution of science-based information. And that's good. And then I think a second motion that says we research and work on the letter to the minister regarding the committee, and that'll give us time to research and dig into the name of the committee, etc.
Okay. Dr. Moglov, is your hand up a second time?
It is, yeah, and I agree with Councillor Cornfield on this one too. Although I do think at some point we should be contacting the ministry regarding that it's a technical panel. But I think that particular issue needs a lot more, how would I put this? Much more strategic way of how to put that letter together in a way that might end up being successful. So I think it needs a lot more thought and discussion as to what that second piece should look like. But I absolutely agree that we should go down that path. But I think it needs more thought.
Thanks for that. Director Evans.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I think we need to be politically astute in what we're asking for. I like this recommendation. I don't want to wordsmith either, but the word encouraging or recommending, I guess they mean the same thing, but usually we make recommendations to the ministry. So just a thought there. But yeah, I think they're two separate issues. I absolutely agree that we should be determining some response to the technical panel because of the just the weighting on that panel, that it is not independent. So I'd like to have more discussion around that, but I think we need to do a bit more research on that. And I think that was how we ended the discussion at the forestry meeting yesterday as well, that we were going to investigate it a bit more. So I think for today, this is the one motion that we move forward on.
Thank you, Director Evans. For my part, I would have to have a look at this committee to see what its makeup is. I really don't have any information myself, so I certainly couldn't support that as an add-on to this motion. Director Moglov.
Oh, no, that was a mistake.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, is there anybody opposed? Okay, that carries. Does anybody have any further comments regarding forestry challenges?
I just a question on that letter that we're recommending. Does that now then go to the full board?
Correct. The recommendation, yeah.
And that, but that won't be obviously today. That would be at our next meeting. Just checking how procedure works. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
I had my hand up, Martin.
Sorry, Director Cornfield.
You had asked a question about First Nations, and I didn't think that that got answered completely. So if you look provincially, it really varies where some First Nations see this, you know, their territory or their treaty lands, you know, their territories as being their land for them to determine and operate on or not operate on, you know, whether or not they use forests, to right up to others who are looking for tenure on land, to others who are interested in revenue sharing. They don't want to get involved other than it's okay to log here, it's not okay to log over here. More the land use side, and are interested in sharing the revenue that derives so for economic benefit to the band. So there is no one size fits all. What you may have seen lately with the Hyatt in down out of Port Alberni area, the Alberni Clayoquot area. I think Westerns is now 35% First Nations on their tenure. So they have entered into agreements, and as most forest industry companies are doing now, entering into agreements with First Nations in some form or another. But there is no one size fits all. It's really independent, or at least dependent on the nation itself.
Thanks for that, Director Cornfield. I know certainly in my region there are some issues going on, such as the court case with the Nuchatlets is fighting for control of their territory on Nook Island. It's some of the last areas that haven't been roaded for the most part, and they are trying to get control of forestry within their area. I'm not sure what's going on with that case currently. It's working its way through the process, but I believe that's been holding up Western in that area. Actually, Nook Island in general, things have really slowed down in the last little while. They seem to be running out of areas that they can access. This year, there's only two cutting permits for all of Nook Island, which is amazing, considering they had been employing up to 100 people there the last few years. So we're going to be seeing a bit of a fall down in that area. They are trying to make it up in other areas, and certainly for us in Tassus here, we are still strongly discouraging Western from coming into the Tassus River Valley behind us, because we are trying to get that as a community forest held jointly with Mowichat and Mushlet First Nations. So we're still working on that. So that's all I'm going to say regarding that. Does anybody have any other comments regarding forestry challenges before we move on? Okay, hearing none. Seniors rideshare service, and it says I'll be leading the discussion on that. I know some of you are pretty familiar with this probably by now. In Tassus, we've been working for a couple of years on trying to get a rideshare service to serve our community, because we have a number of people that are elderly or don't have vehicles or don't have adequate vehicles for traveling our road in the winter. And they've been advocating for years for some kind of rideshare service that would allow people to pay a certain amount to get a ride into Campbell River, ultimately, where they can access their medical appointments, buy groceries, that sort of thing. And of course, I did raise that with the committee. And it sounds like there's some appetite for broader support with the regional district. And I think that would help us a lot because I know we are a small community and right now we're very stretched financially, especially with having to replace our fire hall and our docks and infrastructure constantly breaking down. To even look at something like buying a shuttle bus is a real problem for us. But we do see some synergies here in that it can be used for people of Sakana and people of Gold River to also access for getting into Campbell River, particularly in the winter months when the driving is the most difficult. Um, so I guess we would be looking for letters of support from Gold River and Sakana and Campbell River to come to the regional district regarding this. And there's certainly some questions around it, frequency, like how often this would occur, the sort of ride share, whether it be like once a week, once every 2 weeks. I mean, probably for tasks, once every 2 weeks would be adequate. And the other question is, do we need to survey the communities for interest? And in our case, we've already done that with our age-friendly grant, and there's certainly strong interest in this community, and we definitely have the support here. So I'd just like to put it out for discussion. Director Unger?
Yes, thank you, Director Davis. I'm glad you brought this up, and I know you and I had a quick conversation, regarding this. And, first you're going to bring it to the board, and I said, well, let's have a talk at the MSC about it, because I believe it's something that maybe we can look at, a regional service, Tassus, Sakana, Gold River, into Campbell River, that type of thing. We too have done probably 2, if not 3, feasibility studies, surveys, within our community and the First Nations on the needs. It's definitely needed. I think like yourself and Tass, we don't know exactly, how many days a week or, frequencies, whether it's, a Tuesday, Thursday for medical and a, Wednesday, Friday for groceries, that type of thing. But I'd like to see it kind of open up as a possible, regional look at it. Maybe even a motion to staff to look at a report on the possibility of a service of this nature to us. So, yeah, so I'm just looking for conversation with the other directors and their thoughts.
Okay. Okay, well, I guess I would be looking for some sort of motion regarding this. Brad, would you be interested in making a motion to?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, go together. Like the director, like to ask staff for a report on the options of a regional transportation service for the west coast of the regional district, including Tassus, Sakana, Gold River, and Campbell River. Sorry, I didn't have it prepared.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Committee recommends staff to provide a report on the possibility of a regional service, regional transportation service within the communities of Tassus, Sakana, and Gold River and Campbell River, or I guess the west coast.
Spelling of Sakana is
Yeah,
TSAXANA?
ANA, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that enough, staff?
Yeah, I mean, that's good for us. Yeah, that's good enough for us.
Okay.
I think
Thanks
you had Campbell River on there as well, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
two Campbell River. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Unger. We got an echo. Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. The original talked about seniors ride share, but this doesn't make reference. It talks about a regional transportation service. So is the intent to, as I had some questions about what is ride sharing. Can you legally share rides, especially if you're charging without a commercial license? And I thought that the motion would have reflected more what the ride share program was. Or is that something that staff will include in coming back with a report on the regional transportation / ride share program service?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, that we'll provide all options within the report.
Okay, because there is quite a difference between ride sharing and a regional transportation service. And I know that there is some there's connectivity between Port Hardy and Port McNeill, and Port elsewhere they have a service that runs, and they were looking actually at getting electric buses to provide that, and they made a business case. So I would think, I think there's potential here for something. Just want to make sure it's clear to staff. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Director Cornfield. Yeah, there certainly is a big issue, and I know for myself personally, this has evolved a bit from just meeting the needs of seniors, because in our community, it isn't just seniors that are in need. We have more young people moving here, and they're not always mobile themselves. Sometimes they have no vehicle, so I think it needs to be a broader service, and there's certainly a big difference between rideshare and regional transportation service, but I think it needs to be looked at broadly. And if we could have an actual transportation service, I think that would be the best way to go, rather than depending on just volunteers. I mean, it could potentially go that way as well. In terms of the vehicle, I think we need to purchase a vehicle specifically for the service and not depend on private vehicles. I don't think that would be viable. Another couple of points I would make is that the vehicle should be based here so that it can leave, like in Tassus, so it can leave very early in the morning and to meet the needs of us and the other communities, because obviously we're the longest drive, so it needs to be here. And ideally, it should have a wheelchair lift as well, because we're going to be dealing with people with mobility issues. So these are all considerations. Okay, does anybody have any further comments regarding this motion? Seeing none, is there anybody opposed? Sorry, Director Adams, I just saw your hand go up.
Sorry.
Muted it.
Yep, thank you. I wasn't going to say anything, but Chair, when you made the reference that it would be based in Tassus, our regional district includes Sabellis, and then there are also electoral areas as well. So it may, if you're looking at it, I would more see it on a rotating schedule basis coming from that is truly reflective of the Strathcona Regional District. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for
Good
that.
point. Good
Yeah, it
point.
is a good point. Just in terms of the road networks, I guess there is potential for that, but I have no idea of what the needs are of Zabalas and other areas. I guess staff could explore that as well. I was just trying to think in terms of the viability of meeting the needs of this area, but if there is a possibility for other areas to benefit from this service, then that could be explored as well. It's certainly expanding what I had originally envisioned, but Do the mover and seconder have any issues with that?
No, I'm good. I agree with Director Adams, and it could be something, when staff looks at it, could be like a, Tuesday it's in the ballots and, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Cass's Cold River, whatever. So, yeah, it's regional. So let's look at it. Yep, definitely. Good point.
Okay, thanks, Director Under. Yeah, my only point I was making in terms of TASIS is making sure that it's viable for our community, because it's definitely a full day coming from us out to Campbell River for
Yeah.
appointments and resupply. And so, is there any further discussion? Okay, is there anybody opposed? Okay, thank you, everybody. Sorry, I just lost my agenda here. Bring it back up. Okay, is there any new business? I'm assuming not. Addendum items, closed session, that brings us to termination.
So move.
Motion to terminate.
Second.
Is there anybody opposed? Okay, thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
See you in an hour.
Yeah, one more
Thanks,
hour
Mark.
to go.